Hello and welcome. This is the Zen community of Oregon, making the teachings of the Buddha Dharma accessible to support your practice. New episodes air every week.
I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, and I take refuge in the Sangha. Good morning. Trying to see who's joined us for Sunday program. Nice to have you. Thanks for coming. How many people is this your very first time at the monastery? Great. So, I've had this dry cough for a little bit and I drank some hot lemon water. I think I overdid the lemon because now it feels worse, but we'll see how this goes. So we just finished a loving kindness weekend retreat for those of you who are joining us. Thank you for helping us continue to foster, to cultivate this field of benefaction that we spent time developing this weekend. It's helpful for us to do loving kindness retreats this time of year for several reasons. One of them being that in the middle of our Ango practice period, which is our most intensive practice period of the year, it can be helpful to put out that reminder that although we practice intensively and we put all of our energy into it, that also includes practicing with the heart. So it's helpful it's almost a kind of stepping back and just remembering to be kind to ourselves as we engage with this practice. As many of you know, it's also helpful to do this kind of retreat with an election coming up that many people feel concerned about. This is a direct action. This is something that we can do for ourselves and for our community, to turn and look at the heart and see what's there. So this weekend, Bancho, who co-led the retreat, offered very clear and specific instructions on how to practice metta and how to recite the phrases for metta. And for me, those are, may you be at ease, may you be happy, and may you be free from fear and anxiety. The wonderful thing about this practice is that you don't have to be a good meditator. You don't need to be good at concentration. You don't need to be able to sit still in a zendo for hours at a time. You can add these to your busy life, however hectic it is. You don't even need to be a particularly nice person. That's not important. We don't need to feel a particular way in order to engage the practice of reciting the phrases. These phrases can be offered to ourselves. May I be happy, may I be at ease. And they can be offered to everyone we meet. We can create the habit of welcoming the people that are coming towards us with these phrases. We're always practicing something. So using these phrases can be habit forming, just like anything else. I noticed many years ago that I was in the habit of sort of putting up a guard when people were approaching me, like feeling like I needed to protect the heart. So learning these phrases, I was able to shift that when I would see someone approaching me. It was okay that my heart was guarded. I wasn't trying to change that, but I could add the phrases to that experience, and in doing so, meet the person that was approaching me with more presence and more openness to possibility. So we can make this practice habit forming. Just becomes a natural part of the way we engage with our circumstances. And like anything else, they evolve and we get to be creative with it. So sometimes it's really helpful. The mind is really busy, and it's really helpful to have very distinct phrases that we say and not vary from that. Just know what it's going to be and not question it and just do it. And sometimes we can work with loving kindness in a multitude of ways. And each person will have a different flavor. Each person will have different phrases that help warm up your own heart. When I first noticed this sense of guardedness and started doing the phrases, that evolved into just noticing the physical place of the heart and seeing if I could relax it as someone approached me. I didn't feel like I needed the phrases outright. It was just an opening of that space. Chosen Roshi, my teacher, talks about imagining the heart as a moon that's connecting to the person that's in front of you. And so that's just kind of opening up the energetic field of warm regard. And it's not just at the approach, but we can more and more stay in tune with that through the course of a whole conversation, especially challenging conversations. And again, this isn't about like I'm supposed to have an open heart in the midst of this challenging conversation, but the act simply of remembering to be aware of our body and to be aware of the heart space can dramatically impact how the conversation goes. Because in that moment, we can be kind to ourselves. Oh, this is challenging, and my heart is feeling really tender, and I'm noticing that, I'm aware of it, and I can respond without so much of the reactivity from fear or just not understanding. We can react from presence. So this is really a practice of just being present and noticing our own life. What was really beautiful about this weekend for me, in particular, and other people shared this, was just that we were all doing it together. It's really different and wonderful to sit in a room of almost 60 people who are all practicing loving kindness together. It has this feel of deep safety and warmth. So I want to offer that as something that is really important in this time. If you're feeling anxious about the political situation, Sangha is essential. We're not alone in this. We can come together and we can do really important work of opening the heart. And that work will then impact everything else we do and everyone else we meet. Loving kindness practice is an antidote to anxiety, an important antidote. So we did the phrases this weekend, and we also emphasized the importance of embodiment. This isn't a conceptual practice. This is a practice that we do with our own bodies. Loving kindness practice is an antidote to anxiety, and so is being grounded. So is feeling your feet on the floor. So is noticing your hands in motion. And as we work with loving kindness, staying in the body is essential. So we joined together this weekend in a very intentional way. Community can be very powerful. It's a way that we can respond to the tumultuous times. And a response to the tumultuous times can be, as we did, to sit down, to cultivate, to recognize the warm regard that is already present. And in doing so, be able to respond intentionally with presence to our life. Loving kindness meditation is an important response to the inevitable challenges we will face as human beings. So that's a little bit about what we did this weekend. I would like to talk about loving kindness today in relationship to the 4 notions that turn the mind towards Dharma. These 4 notions are practices that help us move from philosophical speculation about Dharma practice to the immediacy of our own lived experience. There's lots of lists in Buddhism, so here's one. The first of the 4 notions is opportunity. Basically, recognizing opportunity is gratitude practice. During the Ango practice period, during this fall, the whole of ZCO, the whole of Zen Community of Oregon, is taking up the practice of gratitude. So we all at the temple and at the monastery received booklets, and each evening we've been asked to write 3 or 5. Is it 3 or 5? 5 things that we're grateful for. You get extra points if you write more. So that can be in that moment what we're grateful for. It could be something that happened that day, something in our lives. And this is just a way to reorient. This is just a way to acknowledge that there's an enormous abundance of things that we can be grateful for. This is the first of the 4 notions. Opportunity is basically gratitude practice. It is a practice of intentionally recognizing the preciousness of our own life. This is a practice of being a student of life and taking every experience we have as an opportunity to learn and grow, whatever that experience is. So this weekend, I think it was last night at least, we chanted Tori Zenji's Bodhisattva vow, which I'm going to read part of. How then can we be but humbly grateful for the food, drink, and clothing that nourishes and protects us throughout the day? These being, in essence, the warm skin and flesh of great masters, the incarnate compassion of the Buddha. If it is so, even with inanimate objects, how much more should we be kind and merciful towards human beings, even those who are foolish? Though they become our sworn enemies, reviling and persecuting us, we should regard them as bodhisattva manifestations who, in their great compassion, are employing skillful means to help emancipate us from the twisted karma we have produced over countless kalpas through our biased, self-centered views. So how am I translating that, especially for this talk? That we can learn from anything. That, interestingly enough, sometimes our greatest challenges are the very catalysts for our greatest transformations. Sometimes it's unfortunate human beings seem a little bit slow to learn. And sometimes we really do need to hit rock bottom before we say, like, oh, that's not working so well. And really be willing to make real change. We're a rather stubborn species. So every experience is an opportunity for growth. Even meeting those people that really challenge us, what can we learn from that? How can we grow from that? How can it open our heart? And this isn't meant to be a negation of difficulty. We're not saying like, oh, it's not difficult and here's all the beautiful things. It's just opening up the view. It's difficult, and what else is true? What else is happening? How have I grown? What have I learned? What would I like to learn from this? Opportunity. Recognizing the preciousness of this human birth. In a way, there are two directions to go with this exploration, and they're the same thing, but possibly have a slightly different feeling tone. So one is to really look at all that is not. So I'm not in a war zone. I'm not living in a time in history where Dharma is not available. I'm not suffering from mental or physical pain that prevents me from practicing. I'm not spending my time searching for food and shelter. We can also look at opportunity as all that already is. The sun that's shining, the heated floor that's keeping us warm enough to stay in this room, the buildings and grounds, this community and harmony, even our cushions on the floor, all things to be grateful for, and all things that have given us the opportunity to practice. So when we really set our minds on the preciousness of this opportunity, this life, we also understand that this moment to practice is truly rare and fleeting. A really lovely practice that has been offered here on numerous occasions is thank you practice. So when we recognize the preciousness of human life, recognizing that obviously we're completely vulnerable, we're completely dependent on everything that's around us in order to do anything. We manifest thank you practice. When we come into the zendo and bow to our cushion, thank you cushion. I'm so glad to have this seat. We turn around and bow to the community. Thank you, community. Let's do this awakening thing together. We say thank you to the easy things, like cushions and communities, heated floors and buildings. And just like that chant said, we learn to say thank you to the difficult things too. Thanks for that learning. Thanks for that growth. So what are some examples of challenges that become opportunities, challenges that we can learn from? Does anyone want to share a challenge that transformed into a great space of growth and learning?
Sudden job loss.
How could you learn from that?
I thought it was poorly timed and, as I mentioned, unexpected. And it wasn't as if I thought the world was ending, but the world as I had constructed it ended in that moment. But through the support of my community and my partner, I have had the opportunity to go back to school, and I've had an opportunity to build a career that's around the greater good. So,
lovely.
Very wonderful experience.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good example. And actually a really common reason people end up at the monastery. But it opens up the possibility for spiritual practice. Suddenly you have a lot of time on your hands. But that segues very nicely into the second of the four notions is impermanence. But I'll say first, again, we're relating these four notions to the practice of loving kindness. So recognizing the preciousness of this human life tenderizes the heart and opens us up to experience and to other people can. So the second of the four notions is impermanence, the glue that holds it all together. Guagu, a Chan teacher, uses the term new beginnings, and Hogen Roshi often talks about flow. So there's different ways of different angles to take when we're exploring this notion. From the book Pointing Out the Great Way by Dan Brown, he says, "There is no greater motivating force for earnest spiritual practice than the raw awareness of the certainty of one's own death." Recognition that our own life is impermanent. Recognition that everything is changing, flowing, not fixed. This can be helpful to keep in mind as we kindle our aspiration for awakening and our aspiration to live with an open heart. It's also really important to note upaya, which is skillful means in Buddhism. It's a primary teaching in Buddhism. So if you are pondering the certainty of your own death and it's causing you to climb under the covers or react with fear and closing in or nihilism, that's not the purpose of this practice. This practice should be nested in the Buddhist perspective, nested in the teachings, nested in a practice with Sangha and teachers and a flourishing of Dharma. Appreciation for the flickering nature of life and experience and circumstance, people, places, and things is meant to cultivate care and openness. It's meant to, all of these notions are kind of just the same little object that you're looking at from different angles. So this is another way to recognize the preciousness of human life and the preciousness of everything's life. So we are contemplating the knowing that everything is going to change, that life is flow, that the future is unpredictable and unknowable. And in this contemplation, in this really coming to a deep knowing of that truth, we recognize that we would like to live in presence and in kindness right now, because that is the only time that we could ever respond to. How would we like to use this little flicker of an opportunity to practice? What's important? How would we like to engage with our relationships? These can be the fruits of the contemplation of our own death. Another way to contemplate impermanence that Hogen Roshi, my teacher, and the abbot here, if you haven't met him yet, is that we're never stuck. Mind states, moods, feeling tones, people in our lives, everything is changing. We're never stuck. That's hard to remember. There is no need to draw conclusions because it's all going to change. When we make conclusions about who we are, it can really narrow the possibility for growth and transformation, because we're perpetuating this idea, I am like this, and therefore the future will be like this. So we're perpetuating a kind of narrow view of reality. So notice when you start sentences with I always, or I never, or she always, or she never. There is no fixed self in you or in other people to tag those statements to. The study of impermanence helps us understand loving kindness practice in two important ways. One is we always start from where we are. It doesn't matter if the heart is open or closed, if we're angry or happy, it doesn't matter, it's going to change. So that going to change means that the where, always start from where we are, is a moving target. There is no where we are, it's changing. So this is about really being present moment to moment. It's about noticing and appreciating the flow. The third notion, does anybody know these notions? Is this something familiar to anyone? Onshin? Okay. So no one can guess what's next. That's exciting. You never know what's going to happen. The third notion is cause and effect. And I think this is really helpful as we take up a practice of metta or loving kindness, because it bolsters us in this practice. It can. In pointing out the Great Way, Dan Brown says, making a decision to practice says nothing about the course of action to follow. The third of the four notions is designed to develop greater sensitivity to our everyday actions and their effects. So in this context, how does loving kindness practice affect our life? This is about noticing. This is about observing, being present with our heart moment to moment. In metta practice, when we recite the phrases, we often start with someone who we're really open to, someone we really love. And sometimes for me, like I really needed rudimentary lessons in loving kindness. So it was helpful for me to start not with a human. It was helpful for me to start with an animal, a pet. I shared this in maybe both the groups that we did yesterday, but there's these chipmunks out here that are eating the seeds at the tops of the flower stalks. And, you know, you see them like all spread out and they're reaching and the thing's falling, and that quality of the heart that can open up when you're seeing somebody, a little critter, doing something like that is something to notice. Like, what's that like in my body? What's it like when I open the door? And when I was a kid, we had a Rottweiler, so no tail. So the whole body was going when you get home, like the whole thing. And it's just like, yes, 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 yes. And you can feel that in your body. And our job as practitioners is to say, okay, this is open-hearted. This is kindness. This is presence. What does it feel like? What's my mind like? What's my breathing like? We're studying this carefully. How does the heart feel? How does the body feel? Is it tingling? Is it warmer? Careful noticing, careful studying of cause and effect. When my heart is open, when I meet someone and I've remembered to open my heart as they approach, what happens? What happens when I don't have an open heart and I meet someone with impatience and grumpiness? How do they respond? And it's about embodiment. How does it feel in the body? Loving kindness is not a conceptual practice. It's not intellectualizing our life. It's not philosophical speculation. How does this work in my circumstances? We are tasked as practitioners to notice everything. This is meticulous study. Cause and effect, the study of cause and effect in our life. What happens, what is the effect when we are actively practicing loving kindness or warm regard or whatever phrase that works for you? How does that work in our life? And of course, on the larger scale, when we're practicing this notion, it's about more than whether we're loving or not. It's about everything. About our immediate experience, moment to moment, changing. Because this study is not about then deciding like, oh, this is my conclusion about my life. I am like this, and the effect is like this, and it's always going to be like that. It's open. Every moment new. And this meticulous study may have a natural impact of helping steer us away from unskillful actions. And it seems really obvious, but for me, I really need those step-by-step, experience-by-experience instructions and reminders. I really need to see, oh, when I'm patient, this happens. When I'm impatient, this happens. How would I like to respond next time? Dharma, something I've been contemplating, Dharma instructions are actually quite simple. Like come into the zendo, sit down, listen, hold still as you can. Quiet the mind. These are like very direct, seemingly simple instructions. But then, like, you pour them into this tangle, it feels very complicated. And it requires relentless repetition. In my practice, relentless repetition, relentless reminders, cause and effect. Oh, I'm doing it again. This is like the 200th time I've recognized cause and effect, and yet here we go. But we're just slowly, kindly, patiently creating new habits. That's our practice. Down 9 times, up 10. Again and again and again. Does anyone want to guess the 4th notion?
Faults of samsara.
What's that?
Faults of samsara.
Basically. Suffering is one way to put it. So what are we supposed to do about suffering? I don't know. Maybe you could tell me late at lunch. So we just did a 10-day long retreat here at the monastery. And one of the powers of doing a retreat that's that long is that you are committing yourself to returning over and over and over, and then over and over and over again to your cushion, to your own mind. You're committing to not numbing out. You're committing to facing yourself. So this notion, this 4th notion of suffering is this practice of really not turning away, of not numbing out, of choosing to face suffering of ourselves and of the world. Suffering or friction or whatever word you use. There seems to be a promise of a way out of suffering in complicated ways. There's a promise of arrival. If you watch commercials, they'll say, like, get this thing and you will arrive at happiness and it will last and it will be good. And so you want this. Once you have the job, the partner, the level of fitness, the health, once you graduate, I will arrive. Happiness will come and it will stay. This is another one of those things that, like, okay, obviously that is not true. And yet I have done that dozens and dozens of times through my life. I have so many examples of, like, once I get this, then. And maybe it happens a little bit, like you do get something really lovely and it does make you happy. But impermanence is real. And true satisfaction cannot be found in the conditioned world. So if you're working with the four notions, you've already really taken the time to dive into the nature of impermanence. So that can be really clear. Everything is flowing through. We may find momentary reprieve from that favorite meal, but we'll be hungry again and hunting for the next thing to relieve what? To relieve the discomfort of dissatisfaction. So in loving kindness practice, we're honoring that hurt. That is the human condition. We're honoring it in ourselves and in all the people that we meet. I think it was Gigi who said, what did he say? Everyone is deserving of loving kindness, no matter who they are, and everyone needs it. Okay. What did you say at the closing circle? What did you say at the sharing circle?
It was about grief.
Oh, okay, maybe it was somebody else. Sorry. So everyone suffers and everyone benefits from loving kindness, no matter who they are. So suffering is immense, samsara is real. How do we respond? It can feel, the enormity of the suffering can make me want to climb under the covers. But loving kindness, metta, regarding our life and circumstances with warm regard can be our response. We have a way to respond, and it is to open the heart so that everything we meet is met with kindness and love. This can be our response. It's quite powerful. The response is to lighten our hearts, to love ourselves, to love our life, to love the circumstances that meet our life. And we need that light, and we need that light to be shared with everyone. We have the tools. To do this together. What's so wonderful about coming together for a retreat is that we really, especially loving kindness retreat, I guess because it just happened, I don't know about especially, but we don't have to have anything in common with each other. As a Buddhist Sangha, we don't need to have much in common. We don't need to like the same music or the same food. We don't have to come from similar backgrounds. We don't need to be the same age. We're simply here because we want to open our hearts together. And that can create this beautiful bond that is completely transcends all those other things and can make us feel connected to the human experience. All those other things are just peripheral. And in the end, not all that interesting. We just had this simple ingredient of opening the heart together, of wanting to share that with community. And that's enough to really build loving relationships, lovely relationships. And we have this opportunity now. It's been cultivated. Of course, a weekend retreat is just a drop. Loving kindness is lifetimes of practice, lifelong practice. So please take care. You have this light. It may just be this little candle that you need to protect and take out into the world with you. But you have this light. Please use it wisely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Zen Community of Oregon podcast, and thank you for your practice. New episodes air every week. Please consider making a donation at zendust.org. Your support supports us.